Welcome back to the Gnostic Informant, and you are about to attain true gnosis. And today we're going to talk about Israel because I've been back for a little while now, and I haven't just had a basic live with Dr. Ammon, the Greek expert, and we will have Ariel back on the panel in a couple days. It's Shabbat day, so today's Shabbat, and he's doing his thing on Shabbat, so we'll get him back in a couple days when he's here, the Hebrew guy. So but let's get into this. I want to engage with the chat and just talk about some of the things I saw when I was there. By the way, all the content is on its way. I'm working on it. I have a lot to do. There's going to be free content that I'm going to put together for everybody. I'm also going to have some stuff for the Patreon and members stuff as well. That's all coming. The footage I got is just phenomenal. All good 4K footage of the whole country and Egypt, bonus Egypt. So it's all coming. Just be patient, please. I'll give you all that. But I can talk about it a little bit. So we'll just have a conversation about Israel and the North. Because, even the Bible itself talks about this dichotomy between the priests in Jerusalem and the wicked ones in the North. They're always talking about the wicked ones in the North, And I always thought there was something weird about that. But now I can see what they're doing because there's something to it. And when you go to Sepphoris, which is Nazareth, basically, it's completely Hellenized. They have a theater there. They have Greek mosaics all over the place. A lot of them are dated second, third century. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of it's first century BC, second century. So it was very Hellenized from the time of Alexander the Great onward. And the biggest location that really shook me away was Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon is just such a mind-blowing location because Mount Hermon is a holy mountain. It's mentioned in Deuteronomy and Joshua. It's depicted as the northern boundary. It's talked about in Chronicles, a place where Epher, Ishi, Eliel, and the heads of their families were. It's always referenced in some degree in most books of the Old Testament. Psalm 42 talks about it. But this is the thing. Enoch talks about it. This is the location where the fallen ones come down in the book of Enoch, the watchers, the Samael and all these different teaching men how to make metals and finding wives amongst the men. And this is where they fall at. Now, why would they pick this location? That's strange because if we go back before Enoch, we have the Sumerian text way before Enoch, obviously. This is way, way before Enoch. Going back thousands of years before Enoch, the Sumerian tablets talk about Mount Hermon being the location that got split in half. Now just keep that in mind, split in half and opened up where there's a pathway to Hades, the underworld, right? Because the story goes that Gilgamesh defeated the monster Humbaba, the guardian of the cedar forest, the cedar forests of Lebanon, and then the ground split open with the heels of their feet, and they whirled around in circles. And so that's interesting because now you have that story. But now, after Alexander the Great comes through and it gets Hellenized, they say this is the location where Pan's grotto is, and it's the gateway to Hades. So all of these mythologies, Hebrew, Greek, Sumerian, Ugaritic, all these mythologies have something in common with this location. It's really strange. And not only that, right next to it, I'm talking throwing a rock next to it, is where the second location where King Herod built a temple to Augustus and his wife. And so you have all this, like you have Serapis, you have you have Hygeia, you have all these goddesses and gods there, and there's a big temple there. There's all these remains of the temple and stuff like that. And then supposedly, this is also the same location on top of Mount Hermon where the Transfiguration took place in the New Testament. So it's like all these events are happening in this one little area. Why? Who knows? What do you think about that?
For a year, I lived on a hilltop side where we looked down on Nazareth
Yeah,
and from Jezebel's palace. So I used to ride horses in through the valley. And tell us. This is so I love it. Tell us what the grotto is like. Take us a little bit into Pan, because you were just there. Bring it out, like tell these.
first of
Tell
all, it's amazing because you walk in there and it's mostly, Israel's mostly desert. It's mostly brown, mostly just dead. And then you get to this location called Banias, and you all of a sudden it's very green, and there's vineyards everywhere. People are growing grapes and making wine. And then you keep going far down the road, and there's this big luscious thing of water coming out of the ground in a waterfall, and there's life. And it's a and then so you can actually, if you want, you can actually go under the water through this little passage, and then you're like in some other, place. We didn't do that, obviously, but I guess some explorers want to do that kind of stuff. And then you can go underneath the passageway where they say that that's you're going where what's the name of that boat where they take you to Hades? It's in the Odyssey. I think it starts with a C. I can't remember the name of it.
the boat to take you to Hades. What do we need a boat for? Isn't that a place where we perform the necromancy? Isn't that
Right,
the
but there's a boat.
entrance
There's
to
a
hell?
boat that Odysseus takes to get
Kind of,
down there.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's some weird name.
Okay, but Odysseus, wait. Odysseus doesn't take no boats to the underworld. Odysseus celebrates Hecate and opens up a portal through
Okay.
which the ghosts can come,
That's
right?
right.
Get
That's
all
right.
the
Maybe I'm
wolves
thinking of
down there.
Orpheus. I'm thinking of
But
Orpheus.
you're exactly in the right spot in that cave. Tell us about the caves. Tell us about
Yeah.
the
And then
what.
like I said, you go down there, and there's a giant hole in the ground. You can see down, you can see up. And so some people have pointed out that this is the place where heaven and hell meet. And it's just funny how they say that, because it is kind of crazy how it looks like. Here on the bottom, you have Pan's. Pan looks like a devil. He's got goat horns and goat legs, and he plays his flute. It looks like the devil. And on top of that, it's where Jesus has transfiguration with Moses and Elijah. So you had this complete difference of, spiritual whatever happening. Like it's the it's where heaven and hell meet. Like I can see why people call it that. But
Did you
yeah,
did you stay in Nazareth?
yeah. Well, so, the hotel. You talk about the hotel.
No, anywhere. Did you stop and
Yeah,
stay
yes,
in
yes. We drove
Nazareth?
through Nazareth, yes,
Oh.
and we were in Sepphoris, which is this basically same region area.
So
You know,
so
it's
you
like
know that
saying Boston, New England. It's like what's the difference? Which one are you in? You're in New England. Boston's there too. Like, you know what I mean? It's like that. Think about it like
now
that.
did you happen to see there's a convent there in Nazareth? And the reason I point this out is look, this is Jesus of, right? So if you want to know why that expression is important, you get there and you absorb that from the buildings. Side note, I stayed at a convent in Nazareth, and a nun would come in the evening and through the shutters would watch me take a shower. I didn't feel bad doing it, but I thought everybody needs a good show. That's Pan, right? They can't get away from it. Okay, tell us more. Tell us more, Neil. You had so much to tell us.
Yeah. So there's that. Right. That's just one location. But also, if we actually go to Sepphoris, which is the Nazareth region, this is the area that Mary and Joseph would have been living in. This is where they would have went to the market at if they're, assuming that these people who are who they are, right? Just for sake of argument, this would be where they're at. This is where they would go and buy food stuff from. So we're here in Sepphoris, and everywhere you go, there's Greek mosaics. There's a theater. There's an Orpheus mosaic. There is a Dionysus mosaic, and even the theater was up. But a lot of people think that theater goes back to the first century BC. And there's different. You could see the different layers. There's the bottom part that looks older, and the top part looks like it was built on the lower part. They're both old. They're both first century. Like, but you could see how there's like different layers of when stuff was built, and it makes you wonder. There's a giant theater there. If there's really a giant theater there, what are they doing in this theater? Because the Jews aren't really doing playwrights, if I'm not mistaken. Not yet, at least. And in this point in time, in the north, it's completely Hellenized. They're doing they're doing Dionysus plays. They're doing tragedies and comedies in there. And so the people living there, Greeks, probably Greek speaking Jews, probably Hebrew speaking Jews as well, probably a mixture of both. But since the Romans are the ones who occupying the land, you're going to see Greek everywhere and maybe some Latin, calendars here and there and stuff like that.
What do you
But
think,
that's
What do you think the percentage? Because you're setting up the spoken language of a century. So this is fantastic detective work. What percentage do you think that you saw while you were there? If you were to say, Greeks at the top, what percentage, for every 10 Greek words, how many Hebrew words did you see?
I saw very little. There was actually some mosaics there that were both. There would be some sort of Hebrew or Aramaic and Greek, but mostly Greek. And then, yeah, there was some Hebrew stuff you know, laid in, laid in there too.
As if Hebrew is a liturgical language. It looks like by the first century, a liturgical language. It's dropped out, man. The Jews have had the Greek for centuries now, man.
Yeah,
They're bathing in it, brother. You know,
yeah. No,
yeah,
you're
it's
right. You're right,
amazing.
and that's a result of not only Romans, but the Seleucids, the Ptolemies. The world that they lived in was a Greek world. It just was. Like, I'm not surprised that the Gospels are Greek. That doesn't make me think that there was some Roman hand at play. Like, this is normal. This is normal stuff, dude. Like, this is what everything was written in back then. Philo, written in Greek. You know what I mean? The Orphica. I'm looking at the Orphica right now in the pseudepigrapha text. You have the Orphica texts. These are Christian Jewish texts that are talking about Orpheus, and you have these Hellenistic synagogue prayers, and these are Greek texts. You know what I mean? There was 2 synagogues in the north that have Helios inside with the zodiac.
I told you, bro. I told you that. I've been telling you that for months. You
Yeah, I
finally
know. I've always
come.
known about it. I just always wanted to see it in person to get my own observation of it.
Tell us about the sun worshiping.
People, now you hear people
Dude.
go way too far with it. Like
Yeah,
people say that that's Jesus and Helios. That's not Jesus and Helios. It's just Helios. It tells
yeah,
you what it is
yeah.
on the mosaic. You can read the mosaic if you know Hebrew or Greek. You can read the stuff. It's no mystery what it is. It tells you what it is.
Yeah, the
But
zodiac that I saw in the synagogue
right,
in the north where I was all Greek. There was not a
yeah,
lick of Hebrew to it.
yeah. The one we saw both. One of them was all Greek. The other one was Greek and Hebrew. It was mostly Greek, but with some Hebrew words sprinkled in. You know what I mean? Like the word virgin, Betula was on there for Virgo. So instead of having Virgo, it said Betula. We're like, that's interesting. That word Betula. So the North was just fascinating in this way because it was like a melting pot of culture. You're in Israel. It's Jewish, but you see the mark that the Hellenized world left on it. They left a mark on it. And that makes you wonder how much, because I was talking to Robin Faith Walsh about this today. I recorded with her for 2 hours. I got videos coming out. I already have one up on Patreon. I got a free one coming out tomorrow. That's going to be an hour long. And then I'm going to have like 5 videos on Patreon that's going to be up on Patreon. We were talking about this. Like, people assume that Jesus was this completely Hebrew apocalyptic, you know, sort of a fundamentalist, like I don't know how do you pronounce, like, just pure Jewish and nothing else. We just assume that, and we think that the Gospels are Hellenizing Jesus, which is probably not a bad hypothesis. Maybe that's true. But what if he kind of came out the gate with a little bit of with a little bit of stoic in him? What's like, because if we're gonna look at this at the texts that are attributed to him, the parables, the the speeches, the Sermon on the Mount, stuff like that. If we're gonna take this to have any resemblance of what things that he was actually saying, then you have to admit there's some stoic in him. There's some sort of Hellenization going on with with this Jesus character, but that's not to say he's not apocalyptic as well. He could be both. And I don't think there's any reason not to believe or not to agree. Not to say that the gospel writers are completely spot on how they describe him. Not saying that at all. Not saying that one bit. But what I'm saying is, if there is a historical kernel in there based on these teachings and parables and how they're trying to attribute ideas that sound like how he was, then you have to say, I think there's some more going on than just this fundamentalist Jewish guy who's predicting the end of the world. I think he's kind of a stoic, trying to change things a little bit, going against the grain a little bit. Very,
You
very smart guy. Very you know, charismatic guy, if that makes sense.
you have taken the storybook out of it and you have put it, you've been to the context, and that place, that location bombarded you with all the reality. I mean, you saw Pan, right? And yeah, and now you're understanding, transported back in time. You've moved through time and you're back in time. This is fantastic. I'm going to shut up because everybody wants to hear. Could you tell us about, did you get a chance to go up and see Jezebel's Vineyard when you were in the area? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty much one of those sites that are dug up pretty good. You can see they got the layers of time. Like whenever they have something dug up, some sort of site, you can see the layers, and that's one of those spots that have that multiple layers going on. And yeah, that's one of those fun. That's one of those locations that is definitely it's like a time machine going. You know what I mean?
I
You
slept
were
in
there.
that.
Tell us. Well,
I
don't tell
slept
us
in that
about that.
vineyard before it was well excavated.
Oh, so you were there when they were excavating it?
I was with the team that was excavating Megiddo, Tel Megiddo, Armageddon,
Right. We
and
saw that too. And we were standing on
yeah,
top of the hill right at the border of Israel and Syria. And like you could see the road to Damascus. And then you see on the right, you see Armageddon. This is where the battle took place. The battle between the Egyptians and the Assyrians in like 2000 BC, something like that. And they're like, this is where the final war we're going to take place too. It's Armageddon, Armageddon, Armageddon. And you're
and
looking at
that
you're looking down at that plane. You're thinking there was a bunch of chariots, there was a bunch of soldiers down there with swords and uh, with holding their phalanxes or whatever they had. Like I'm not a warfare
what are they holding?
expert, but I'm not. I
What
don't
are
know
they?
about
What are they holding? That's a
what do you
Bakken holding.
spears,
You said a
spears.
Bakken holding a
I
phallus.
said
I think I
phalanx,
know.
but I meant spears. Phalanx is the group,
Too
is the
much.
Macedonian. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
That's the Macedonian thing.
Jordan River will do that to
Philip of
your brain.
Macedon. In fact, I do know what a phalanx is. Philip of Macedon invented the phalanx.
But okay, but 2,000 years before that was that old temple at the bottom. Before that big
Yeah,
conflagration, there's underneath it
Canaanite temple. Canaanite
the
temple.
Canaanite temple. We found that. We found that.
So what is that in the 80s? You were there?
No, 1990.
Wow.
Before they uncovered the floor of the temple, we were there. It was fantastic. And the Chicago team was like, "Stop! Everybody, stop! Get out! Get out!"
It's all a big deal. Once you find something, everybody stop. We have to figure out who's going to be like a part of this now.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't just dig stuff up there and just get away with it. Like there's a
No,
lot of stuff that still needs to be done.
and I don't know how far they've come because they always change their date. They refine their work as they go. But they were saying that Canaanite temple's 4,000 BC. They were saying fourth millennium.
Yeah. There was a place we went to in that same area, right by there. And they called it the House of Dionysus. and it was some rich person's house from like the 2nd century or 1st century,
Yeah.
and there was all these mosaics, beautiful mosaics, Greek mosaics. But the excavation team started digging, and then they just left it there. And now people are throwing their trash inside the excavation spots, and it looks like it looks horrible. And like you see a lot of spots like that where it just seems like interest people lost their interest in digging in these certain spots, and then
Yeah.
it just turns into a wasteland.
Yeah, in each country they deal with their sites in their own way. Some are way better than
Some
others.
make you cover it back up.
Right. No, no, some it's a huge deal. And
Yeah. In Egypt, they have these places where they'll dig up a whole town and they'll excavate and get all the pottery, get whatever they got, and then take their pictures and then bury it back up like it never happened.
huh,
People are walking back over it again.
huh.
And that's
the
another thing. We'll talk about Egypt too in a little bit because Egypt was something. It was a different world than Israel. It really was way different.
yeah. Yeah.
Egypt was it was trash everywhere. Like just going to the pyramids. So you see the wonder of the world, the Great Pyramids, and then you look down on the ground, plastic everywhere. You can't take a step in that sand, in that desert, without stepping on plastic. There's just as much plastic as there's grains of sand. It's so bad. And you drive through the Nile, like where the Nile River and the canals are and all that, just complete trash dumps everywhere. It's sad to see that, but that's the way it was.
That's a shame. I chased a guy with a shovel at Megiddo. I was no, I did. Some Israeli tourist. It wasn't a European tourist. You could tell because they're always dressed like European tourists and Americans, and it's funny. But he was throwing rocks off the top of the hill down onto the temple. And I
Right.
was like, "You son of a bitch." And I grabbed the shovel and took off after him. And they were like, "No, no, no, don't do that." And a couple people came and grabbed him, and he went off with this group that he was with. And I thought, people who don't respect those sites, they need to visitations of the devil. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. To keep going, man. You went to Masada too. Tell us
Yeah,
about Masada.
Masada was hot, it was the desert, but it was also surreal because you could still see where the Roman camps were. You can see where they set up their little squares, you know, their camps basically. And there's three of them. There's two on one side. No, there's I think there's four actually technically because they cornered the place. Like you had two camps over here, two camps over there, and then a camp over there, and it was completely surrounding the place so that nobody can leave and everybody's on top of Masada. And
Did
on
you
top
walk?
of Masada was this giant pool. Open, you see the opening, and it was like there was enough water for like 3 years inside where that was. It was empty now, but they were explaining how this thing was full of water, enough water for like 3 years. And so the Jews had so much water, and the Romans were on the bottom, probably thirsty as hell because there's no water down there. There's no running water. They just have the pools on top from when it actually rains once a year. Once a year, that's it.
Well, that's what the genius is.
That was a genius architecture. They built a
You
thing that could
probably
capture all the rain for a year.
you probably noticed. Well, and the genius of the Roman engineering. Everybody goes to Masada and they
Well,
dwell
that was
upon
Herod. That was Herod's engineering.
the genius of the Roman engineering is demonstrated in the
Oh,
fact
so
that
yeah, that's what I was about
they
to say
could
next.
be there and still get supplied with water because the efficiency
Yeah,
of the Roman military.
that's exactly true.
And
And
look at
they
how
and
did
they
you get
built
up there?
ramps. They built ramps from the ground all the way up in this gigantic mountain that bigger than I've ever been on before. And they got up there with these ramps and took over. And
It's
then
the only way
by the
to
time
get
they got
up.
up there, everybody was dead.
It's the only way to get up Masada, unless they've
Yeah.
done something in the last few years. It's the only way to get up there is the Roman ramp.
Yeah, now they have the ramps up there that go like they're like trails, but they also have like the lift that brings you up there.
Oh, okay. Did you walk or did you?
We took the lift.
Oh, you lazy bum.
Yeah, we were lazy.
Walk
We were.
next
It was
time.
at the end of our tour, dude. We were all beat.
Oh, you were those guys. I was the
Yeah.
guy going up the ramp and up the trail up, and they gave us rifles because things were dangerous at the time. Did you run into any oddities of difficulty while you were over there traveling?
Um. Wait, say that again.
Did you run into any problems? You know, usually there's political unrest and there's violence and I was woken up one morning with howitzers outside of the place that we were staying in going boom, 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 boom. And they were shooting up into Lebanon. I was like, God, what? Did you get any?
There was a lot of helicopters and jets flying over our heads. Like we were, listen, we were in Lake. This was crazy. I actually had this on video. You'll see it in my videos when I release it. We were sitting in Lake Tiberias. You know the lake. You know the Galilee, the lake up in the north, and there was a jet that flew right like no, I'm sorry, not jet. There were jets everywhere, but in this particular case, it was a helicopter that flew like right close to our boat and like right over our heads, and it was so close and loud that you felt it. And I just remember being like, "Yeah, these people are in a they're this is some real shit going out here. This isn't like Kansas anymore. There's people who hate each other out here, and that we really want to. This land matters to people. That was a big deal too. Like noticing that. You're right. And the checkpoints and stuff. Like it's not like you're going through New York to New Jersey and you just check through. No. This is you're might get patted down. They might jump in your car and look through your car, make sure you don't have anything.
Yeah,
When you drive through Ammon and Jordan and
yeah.
Israel or different locations like that, the West Bank, stuff like that. It's all checkpoints and it's all different people doing the different interests. You know.
I was up north in a rental car and I drove through a checkpoint and into a restricted area up on the Golan.
Yeah.
And within 60 seconds to a minute, an entire Humvee with a machine gun on the top just came out of nowhere, and the guy had it pointed right at me. I was just like, oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong area. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh God, they took us out and questioned us, and it was one thing and another. But that's part of the air. That's part of the air over there.
Well,
You
the
know,
air is, if you really want to talk about the air, go to Jerusalem, go to the Temple Mount. You will feel it in the air. That is where everyone is uptight. What are you here for? What are you filming? What are you looking at? Everybody there is wondering who you are, or what religion you are, or what do you worship, and what side you're on. Like that's what it felt like there. And that to me was so weird. It's so weird how we're in this place that it's a beautiful place, beautiful, beautiful temple that the Muslims built. And you think this would be a national park and everybody should be celebrating history, but no, we're waiting for the end of the world, and this is going to be we're going to be the chosen ones. Watch, just wait, and you'll see it's going to be us. We're the ones that have the right book, and the right language. It's like, but
did you
it
stay?
was interesting. It was interesting to experience that though. I'm not going to lie.
Did you stay in Jerusalem?
Yeah, yeah, we were stayed in Jerusalem for 4 days.
Did you notice, in addition to that environment, the Jerusalem syndrome and everything, where you get religious people that flock there,
Yeah,
and they
people accuse me of that because I posted some videos there. I'm like,
oh, is that right?
not me, dude. Sorry, I ain't feeling that right now. Well,
Did they did it when they go to the Garden of Gethsemane? You went to the garden.
yeah,
Tell us
the
about it.
garden. You're right. People were freaking out there. The Christians, not no one else besides the Christians were there. No Muslims or Jews care about Garden of Gethsemane. That means nothing to them. There was only white people there. Only American tourists. That's it. That's all you saw in the Garden of Gethsemane. You're laughing because you know what I'm talking about. It's like going back in America when you walk there. Like you go to if you're getting tired of being abroad, go to the Garden of Gethsemane and you'll be around a bunch of Americans for a little while. But they're all there. They're all sitting there crying. Like this is where Jesus was the night before he got handed over.
Did
But
you?
you and I know, you and I have a different reason why we wanted to go there, and you know why I wanted to film there.
You should have
That's
asked
what the
him.
naked boy was. That's what the naked boy was. And all these people are crying over this location. This
You
is
could
where
go
he got
by.
arrested with a naked boy who ran away with a towel. Why doesn't anyone talk about that?
You you could have looked for him. At least you could have looked. Did you look for him
There
while
was a
you were
lot of.
there?
Well, here's the
Did you
thing about that.
go
There's
behind the
3
tree?
Garden of Gethsemane's, and they all looked exactly the same. They all have the same amount of tourists, and they're all just as sure they're the right one. So it's so funny because it's you don't know if it's the right one or not. There's like different spots that could be it. It's one of the 3. Yeah, they do have it down to a 3. Like it's okay, they got it down to that. Who knows which tree he was standing at? Like
It's
no
always
one
a
knows
magic.
that shit.
It's always a magic tree. It always is
Yeah,
a
there's
magic
always like
tree.
this is probably the tree that he stood at. And why do we think that? Well, in the text it says that the tree had a curve to the right a little bit. Well, this one has a slightly same curve. We think it's 2,000-year-old tree, so yeah, we found it. It's like,
Yeah.
shut up. But Seth High has a super chat. Thank you, Seth High, for the super chat. Beware of those Egyptian hotels. Yes. So, quick little story about that. When we went there, we were going to share a room. That was the plan. The room was already paid for. And I was with a female in such a conservative country, and they're like, "Do you have the documentation of the marriage?" No, we're here. We're traveling. We're friends. No, 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 no. You cannot. No, no, no. You cannot have room. No, no. You need documentation of marriage. And I'm just like, wow, this is. Hey, it's not my house, so we had to cough it up. We had to cough, and then the next day when we went down to eat breakfast and get some coffee, and the person who had paid with the card wasn't mine, didn't have my name on it, and they're like, "What's your name?" Oh, my name's Neil. And why does it say this? Because that person's paying, but that's not you. No, no, it's not me. And like, don't you understand? Someone pays. We both pay. Like, someone paid for both of us. Do you not want our money? And they're like making a big deal out of like people splitting a bill. That was weird, man. So whatever. I'm talking shit right now, but sorry. That's just my experience. That's just the way it felt. It felt weird.
When you
So
were in Kahira,
thank you for that super chat, Seth.
when you were in Cairo, did you go sit in a cafe at about 5, 6 p.m. when everybody goes out and smokes their
Yeah,
pipes and their
Cairo.
hashish and
Yeah,
drink your tea?
Cairo's like being in the 70s.
Yeah.
It was like being it was everybody had old cars, old vans, old like it was like the 70s. Everyone's smoking inside.
Did you love the
Very
Egyptian?
conservative though, very conservative.
Did you love the Egyptian people? I loved the
Honestly,
Egyptian
yes,
people.
I did. I like that. I like everybody there. There was some. I met this guide, and turned out to be one of the most helpful people I've ever met in my ever. And he helped me out. Got me a travel guide that was a scholar who was studying um, ancient Egyptian stuff. He brought me to Saqqara, took me to all the different spots, brought me to Djoser's pyramid, brought me to Assisi's pyramid, brought me to all these different spots, and showed me everything. And I was like, this was so helpful. I would have never found this stuff on my own, but I found a nice guy who did it for like not obviously I paid him, but this person wasn't even asking for it. It was just doing it, and like it wasn't like, here, give me this much money and I'll do this. It was more like, here, let's go there, and then I would go there and I'd be like, wow, that was great. Here, let me pay you what I think is fair, and they were happy with it, and we just kept doing that for the whole time, the whole week basically, and it was worked out great. Like they were awesome. They were awesome people. There
Yeah,
was a lot
guides
of
are.
people hustling though. There was like people with their hands out with, give me money, give me money. You can't even walk by somebody's house. If you step on their property, they might want a tip for that. Like
That's why.
everything's for sale. If you want to know if you want to know what happens with capitalism with no regulations over a long period of time, go to Egypt and you'll find that is the final product of capitalism, no hold bars, with no regulations, trash everywhere, and everybody selling shit on the streets. It's not fun. The people, not saying the people aren't good, but It's not like you want some regulations in your world. Trust me, you want that. And then what the person that you might think is an asshole who told you to pick up your litter, those people are saving this country from going to shit like that. Just saying, just saying. But yeah,
You gotta dig too. In Egypt, I used to hang out on the Nile,
yeah,
and there within the impoverished community there, you can actually meet really cool people, and I got taken to a village that way. Would have never gone otherwise. In order to, you know,
yeah,
score an evening of
right,
smoking on the Nile River. Which, I mean, who would pass that up,
right.
right?
Yeah, of course, it was great. Things we should know. Thank you for the super chat. In Jerusalem, was anything to you actually otherworldly? Otherworldly? Yeah, I'll say this. What's otherworldly was how in Jerusalem the traditions are in your face. Like you go to if you're in the Jewish section by the wall, it's you better put on that thing they put here, we'll give you one. You don't have one? Here, take one. Hey, women, you go on that side. Men on this side. That's to me that was otherworldly. Then walking through on the other side of Jerusalem, where every five times a day, where the speakers turn on, and it's the loudspeaker, the whole city can hear the praying. And so there you have that too. That's otherworldly because that's not what you know. That's not what you normally see in any city. That's in Jerusalem. So I would say that's the closest thing I would say to otherworldly. Yeah,
I used to love to listen to that. A lot of people
I liked
don't.
it. I liked it.
Yeah,
It was
after a
interesting.
while, it gets you into. I'm telling you, you got to be sitting in the cafe.
Yeah, yeah,
You,
exactly.
you got to be
You said,
absorbed
yeah. I know
into it. You know
exactly
what I
what you
mean?
mean.
You
I know
got to be
exactly.
taken into your body what they're taking, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I get it. These
Yeah, yeah.
they're
They,
playing.
that's the culture. Yeah, like, yep, that's the culture, and that's just that's what they want to do, and I just I respect those type of things. I want people to have culture and have their and celebrate their past and have their traditions and worship their religions. I just hope that people can balance that off with progression in the world and not hating people because they don't believe in the same thing as you. That's the one. That's it. That's right. That's the only thing I'm asking for. And everything else, I think,
Yeah, hail Satan to that for
hell
sure.
Satan to that. Apollo, thank you for the $2 super chat. I like that thumbnail too. That's a dope thumbnail. The Apollo with I saw a few of those in some of the museums out there. There's a couple just like that. The Israel museums are huge, dude. Israel. What was the one we went to at the end? Down in the south. Yeah, that one was huge. They just had so much stuff from the different periods, Roman period, Greek period, all these different periods, and there's just so much history in this place. So like even just being in the museums in Israel was kind of I got a lot of film in there too. All the different ossuaries and all the different Egyptian and Assyrian, Babylonian stuff. All of that been these are things that have been dug in Israel that people found there and they bring them to the museums. They're not stolen and taken out by Hobby Lobby and sent to some museum in America. People don't realize this, but every major city in America has a museum. And then you go to that museum, you're going to find Egyptian mummies, you're going to find artifacts from Israel, and that's not from they didn't get it there like the right way because those countries want those to be in their museums. They don't want it to be in America. But somehow people do shady shit, and it ends up in a Memphis museum or a New York museum or something, and that's or England's museum. England's museums are huge.
Yeah, I was going to say the
Oh,
Elgin marbles taken from the Parthenon, right? Yeah, that was
right.
loot. That's
Or the
loot.
French during the time of Napoleon just swept through and went to Egypt and Israel and took a bunch of took whatever, loaded it up on during those times.
Those
You know,
jerks with
they stole it.
Napoleon.
They stole it. That's straight up what they did. They stole it. I'm just
Those
saying.
jerks. Those jerks with Napoleon shot off the nose of the Sphinx. I'd like to resurrect every one of them and boil them.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Jason Sobek, Lord of the Four Corners. Welcome back, Ammon. Good to see you. Didaskalos.
Thank you.
Didaskalos.
Yes, Sobek, thank you. And thankfully, uh, Neil was able to tell us about the Jordan. Neil,
The
tell us
Jordan.
about, the people wanted to know.
Being
Sobek
down in
is going to know what. Why is the Jordan River associated with Aphroditic sexuality?
I don't know. That's a
What
good
is,
question. I don't never heard that before, but I will tell you this. This is
yeah.
if you don't believe me, I don't know how I'll prove it to you. I have screenshots. Ask Derek, ask Derek's wife, ask James Tabor, ask anyone there I was with. Me and Derek were joking around. We went into the Jordan River. He was going to baptize me. And he did it again to his wife too. While we were in there, it gets a little bit shady for a second. Don't think nothing of it. It got shady. Maybe there's a cloud over the sun. There was a partial eclipse while I was getting baptized. Get this, on my birthday, on my 33rd birthday in Jordan, while Derek was baptizing me, there was a partial eclipse. Spooky. Like when we found this out, we were just like, "What? There's no way this is true." We looked it up, and looked at the time and everything. Like, yeah, we were in the water at that time. Wow, like it's just one of those weird coincidences that happen once in a while. Think about it. Maybe I am the chosen antichrist.
That's the most Gnostic thing I think I've ever
It's the
heard in my
most
life,
Gnostic thing
isn't
of all
it?
time. A guy who calls himself Gnostic Informant gets baptized at age 33, and then there's a partial eclipse. Of course that would happen. Of course that would happen.
You guys saw it right here, Birth of the
Yeah.
Antichrist.
I got
Here he
receipts to
is.
prove it. I got receipts to prove it if you don't
What
believe me.
would it be so bad to be the Antichrist? I mean, would it?
I would be very well honored. You know,
You
someone's got to
could,
do it.
you could,
If I
yeah,
was the chosen one for that, I'll be
y-
talked about forever.
yeah.
Shit, I'll be famous for that one.
Bring
Shit,
it,
I'll take it.
bring the beast,
Judas
baby.
is probably cool with how much fame he got for what he did.
Yeah, right, right.
Shit, I'm Judas, man.
Judas. How can you go from Antichrist to Judas? There's no comparison.
I'm just
That
saying,
punk
like
took
the bad
coin.
guys in
That
history.
punk. Wait, that punk took coin. He took coin. Antichrist doesn't take any coin, bro. His art
No, no
is
coin.
just his art. You
No,
know what I
no,
mean?
no super chats necessary for the Antichrist. Speaking of that, there's another super chat. Paul Kickling, thank you for the super chat. You should read how the King of Georgia convinced. Does that mean convinced? Convinced, because I'm thinking the G is next to the okay. Convinced himself to convert to Christianity, involved in the eclipse. Interesting. Yeah, maybe I'm the second king of Georgia.
What do you think the power of the eclipse was, Neil? So
It was
you
an
entered,
omen.
you know, when Jesus is baptized, he opens up Uranos,
Yeah.
right? And from it comes the dove or the Holy Spirit, which we all know as Gnostics is Sophia. We all
Mhm.
know that. And he
Yeah.
receives her in this kind of, you know what I mean? And there he goes. He's walking the way with Mary Magdalene. Oh my God. What do you think the influence of to answer this question, what do you think the influence of that eclipse is? What does that mean? If you went to a Pan's Grotto and you talked to the priestess and you said, what does this mean? This is what happened. What would she tell you?
I think it's in the Sibylline oracles what these mean. The Sibyl has an answer to all this stuff. Whenever there's an eclipse on a certain day, or the Sibylline oracle, you're supposed to. If you read like Livy, the Roman historian Livy, he'll be like, and so the consul resorted to the Sibyl on what to do next. Like they're like they couldn't do anything without resorting to what the Sibyl told them next. And by the way, the Sibyl, that Sibylline book religion, which was the Roman imperial cult, later becomes Christianity eventually. The Sibylline books there's Jewish Sibylline books, and then there's Christian Sibylline books, and it's the weirdest thing because I was talking about how Mount Hermon is like this like place where all these mythologies collide. Well, the Sibylline oracles, the books where mythologies collide, right? It's the one thing in all of ancient religions where you can point to and say, yeah, there's pagan Sibylline books, there's Jewish Sibylline books, and there's Christian Sibylline books. They're all called Sibylline books, and they all have the same sort of function: prophecies,
What
explaining
does
events.
Celsus? What does Celsus tell us, Neil? You read the text. What does Celsus tell us the Christians were first called?
Um.
Sibylus.
Oh yeah, that's right. He did say that. Yeah, Sibylist. Yeah, I forgot about that. Because I'm thinking of something else. Because Celsus is a great read because he really takes it to the Christians and says, "You guys don't know. You guys don't know it. You guys are a degradation of the true way. The true way is this, and we have it figured out. You guys just stop. You're acting crazy. You're ruining everything." Like Celsus is great. You got to read Celsus, man. You got to read Celsus. He really hammers. He really takes it to the Christians in that time period. They must have hated him. They must have hated Celsus in the 2nd century because he was really like going like he was like, "Are you serious? Like, you really think that we're supposed to worship some guy who got crucified? Like, are you out of your mind?"
It's probably why
It's kind of funny to think about.
When you say he was probably hated, when you say he was probably hated, yeah, that's why they burned his books after he, and
Yeah.
we only have them through.
Oh yeah, they did
Origin,
not preserve his text.
Origin.
Origen wrote a commentary, but he had so much commentary on Celsus's book that we could now remake Celsus's book. So just by a mistake of trying to refute him, he preserved him. That happens a lot with Christian texts. Like they try to refute stuff and then they end up passing it down instead. And then we get cool shit like the Nazians and the Ophites and the Carpocratians, people who they tried to forget about, but we now have them because they fucking talk shit. That's what happens when you talk shit about someone. You're just promoting them. You know what I mean?
You seem to me to be most impressed by Pan's Grotto and kind of how it transported you to a different place and time. What do you think it is? What do you think it is? You said you implied to us that this is something that over millennia is recognized by the people there, that this place has a power. It's a gateway to Hades. Okay.
It was definitely a holy spot for sure.
Yeah. And who do you think is the God of that holy spot? If we have to access that spot, we got to go through the God, right? So who is that?
Well, don't forget, you have the temple to Augustus right there. So it was you could say Venus there, because the Caesars, even though they're deified, even though they're daemons, they're sons of Venus, and they're under the Venus line.
Right.
So Venus is reigning heavily over there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And then the what you might want to call now Gnostics or Christians, those people at the time are worshiping those divinities, right? They're activating those oracles. That's why there's a Sibyllist, there's a Pythia priestess that follows Paul around, saying, "This is the Christ. This is the guy who follows the Christ."
Yeah, that's in the Book of Acts.
Everybody's like, "How did she get onto his?"
That's one of those. Look, I like that story because it's so weird. It makes no sense if someone's just making it up.
Right.
It makes you wonder if it's based on an actual story that somebody told about Paul, because it's just so weird. Some girl following him around, and then what happens? She ends up like, what does he end up doing? He tries to save her or something, or get her converted.
She follows him for several days.
Yeah,
he's the promoter of the Christ, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
She's in the mysteries. She knows how they work.
Right. Yeah.
And so anyway, he gets pissed off about it and commands her demon to come out of her, and it pisses off the people in the community, and they throw him in jail for a while. Anyway, it gets worked out. He gets gets beaten up and sent out of town. Don't come back, sir. Yeah, it makes you wonder why he didn't get that power that Peter got. Because I don't know. He got crucified though, so apparently upside down. But Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. What's important is that you've purged the rest of your visit because you had such great observations about it.
Yeah, Jason makes a good point here, though. If you are somebody who's making a YouTube channel and you're doing counter apologetics, if you want to steal some great ideas, go read Kelsis. Go read the new, like the reconstructed version of Kelsis that's on Amazon, and you will just you will be fine. Just steal his ideas. No, I'm just kidding. No, make sure to give him credit for it. But yeah, like Kelsis really does like even though I wasn't a Christian anymore, reading Kelsis, I remember thinking if I was a Christian and I was reading this, this might have shook my faith a little bit. Like he's really hammering at this thing. Like he's really debunking this thing. Like that it's that good. Like he was that good at like oration and conversation and making good points.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah, and you can understand why they call the Christians atheists, right?
Yeah.
Because imagine if you're promoting this underground thing that people suspect is Bacchic, right? And they're even writing about it as Bacchic, and you've got people using the communions from the bodies and the body fluids. Yeah. Where is everything going? And it's going toward that grotto, right? We're putting ourselves in a position it's satanic. I love this stuff. You've just, I mean, how satanic? Here's the question I want to ask you. How satanic was this place that is the entrance to the underworld?
It was so satanic that I'm not kidding this when I say this. When I walked in there was another group of people following a tour, and the guy had a microphone. And the only word, he was speaking Hebrew so fast, the only word I heard him say was Shatan. He said he was pointing at it like he's basically saying Pan is Satan to them. Like he's no different. He's the same thing. And I'm just like thinking like that's funny because that's where you get this idea. This might be. I'm just guessing right now. I don't know if this is true or not. But this might be one of the locations where Pan gets identified with Satan and where you get this devil horn Satan from. Because think about it. There's no text in the Bible that says Satan has horns or has a goat legs or plays a flute. None doesn't say anything like that. But it does for Pan. And now when you go to Israel and you go to Pan's grotto, now you're like, that's why they do that. I see now. So, and by the way, remember what I said? This is the same location where the fallen ones in Enoch are fallen from. They fall on Mount Hermon first thing first. And that's where they make their packs. That's where they start teaching people how to use metals and all this crazy stuff. And so that connects itself to a Hebrew version of the text that we get from Prometheus, where Prometheus, instead of being the fallen one, he's the good guy. He's the creator. He taught men how to have, take care of themselves and how to save themselves from Zeus, who's going to drown them all out. Like you see it's like the same mythology with inverse. So I think there's a lot of that happening in the ancient world.
So what you don't see,
The tree of knowledge and the tree of life, right? You have like this tree of knowledge of good and evil. And like on one side and one story that's bad, but to other groups, gnosis is a good thing. Gnosis is how you get saved. Gnosis is how you become a god, right? Like how else are we gonna make it? We need to progress. We need gnosis. We need knowledge, science, right? It's interesting how that played out like that,
One of Pan's epithets, that's a title that they give him in the Orphic hymns. You'll find is Prometheus.
Yeah.
Right. So, and people don't read these religious texts. There are all these religious texts that remain untranslated because people aren't interested in them. They're really esoteric. They have a lot to do with drugs. Speaking of the sons of God and on the mount and the fall. And I wanted so much tonight. I don't have time, but I wanted so much tonight.
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff I got to do tonight too. So we're going to wrap this up pretty soon. But yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
To talk about the devil's penis because it's in the apocalypse. It's in the apocalypse and you see him use it. Apocalypse 12 is a love story that is overcovered. It's an old pagan love story that is covered over with the detritus of stinky man sweat and a movement away from or a rejection of the divine virgin.
Well, what I was going to say was, because Plato even talks about this esoteric, the real true meaning behind all these myths, these mythologies. There's an esoteric, there's opposing viewpoints being hashed out within these myths, within these scripture. And like Plato, when he talks about how he doesn't like Homer, he's against Homer. He talks shit about Homer. He's like, the way Homer depicted Achilles in Hades crying and saying, I wish I was back on Earth. Because, this is in the text. This is in the Odyssey. Homer, or in the book of the Odyssey, because Achilles is the hero, one of the heroes in the Iliad.
Because
in the next book, Achilles is dead. He's in Hades. Yes. And when Odysseus goes and meets him, what does he say to him? He says, I would rather be the lowest person on Earth than be the highest person here down in Hades. And he's acting like a little bitch about being in Hades. So Plato says that's not how the underworld should be. That's not how the afterlife should be. The afterlife should be something that only good people should look forward to, because you and your family are going and all the bad people aren't going. And you see how Platonism and Judaism collide in Christianity, and they all go hand in hand, and they all agree on certain things. This whole idea of piety, and those ideas all are like one stream, and then the other stream is like the Bacchic and revelry, and we're going to Hades, so let's live it up now. We're all going to be in Hades one day. Who cares? And there's two different viewpoints happening in mythology.
And the resurrection in these texts that I'm reading right now, untranslated, the resurrection is huge. The fact that the necromancer can pull up from the underworld, can pull up into the air, the ghost, the spirit, and reanimate, that's a huge deal. And it's part of that drug craft that those giants were teaching. They present it this way, as if around you are the images with which you can use to make a quantum machine. And that quantum machine can do things for you. It can transport you through time and space. It can create a vantage point for you to be able to turn
Covenant. It's like the Ark of the Covenant.
Past, present, and future. Right? It's amazing.
Let me ask you this. Next time we go live, probably in 2 days from now, did you say you wanted to do some Revelation stuff?
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that in the chat? Revelation. How about we do some translating of Revelation 12, what the Greek really says?
Yeah.
Let's do Revelation 12, the women and the child and the dragon.
I have to warn you, it's a little bit dirty, especially.
It's gonna be dirty. That's what we're gonna do. Me, you, and Ariel. We're gonna do Revelation 12. The women was clothed with the sun, with 12 rays. What is it? 12 stars around her head.
Yeah.
And she's got a baby in her hand, and she's got the moon at her feet. We're gonna go through this and try to figure out what it all means.
And supposedly, if we do it right, the images from it can initiate you.
I want to know what the Greek says. I don't care what the English says. Let's go to the Greek.
Yeah, no, fuck the English. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I almost went the whole time without.
No, it's okay. I probably won't get dinged for that.
All right.
You'll be all right.
All right.
But yeah, this was great, and I know you got work to do, and so do I. I want to get some of this editing done so I can get this content out there for everybody who's watching.
Yeah.
So everybody watching, thank you for the super chats. You guys are the best. Always good seeing everybody in the chat. Always good seeing Sobek and everybody else, and Logan and Mitzvos, Juan, Yellow Psych, Patricia, Ramina, all of you. I always love seeing everybody here. So thank you for that, and we'll be back soon. And just stay tuned for the content that I'm editing, that I'm trying to get out there. It's coming. I just got over this sickness, and you have just attained true gnosis.
You have just attained true gnosis. The demiurge has no power over you.